people that I see that are always working in the industry are the people that are willing to make the mistakes, you know, learn from their lessons and just keep learning and keep doing.
Jon Keeyes is a prolific producer and director. He just finished directing Antonio Banderas in back-to-back features, and that is just a snippet of the wisdom that he's about to drop. Don't forget to share and subscribe. Jon Keeyes.
Keith Harris.
How's it going, man?
It's going good. It's going really good. It's been a crazy few years.
Since 2020. All right. The start of the pandemic, bro. You've slated in some form 15 features in the middle of a pandemic, dude.
Once things opened up and SAG and the unions were, you know, allowing people to start filming again, we were the third production up and running in COVID. It was completely crazy. But everybody kind of embraced it, obviously, and took it seriously. And I think by like day 3, we all were like kind of just in the rhythm of doing it, and it wasn't any big deal after that.
All right, so let's rewind for just a minute. So where are you from originally?
I grew up in Los Angeles, outside of Los Angeles. Yeah, I grew up in Los Angeles. I've always joked that I was the filmmaker who left Los Angeles to make movies, because I grew up out there. I grew up near Hollywood, you know, loved movies my entire life, but never intended to be a filmmaker. That wasn't part of the equation. Writing was the thing that I always wanted to do, and I thought I was going to be a journalist, and I thought I was going to be a novelist, and it wasn't until I was like in my late 20s, I was working as an entertainment journalist and decided to write a screenplay thinking I would sell it. And a good friend was like, oh, it's a horror movie. And of course, this is before digital. And they were like, you know, if you just make something, you can sell it type of thing. And she was like, you should just go make this yourself. And I was like, hey, that's an interesting idea. Let's do it. And absolutely fell in love with it.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. And you were in Texas at the time?
I was in Texas. Yeah, I was living in Fort Worth. And so it was all, I mean, and none of us knew what we were doing when we made that first movie. I was, you know, my Rick Carey, my partner at Highland Mist, we put the company together, and we were like, okay, a year from today, let's figure out how to do this. And let's be up and running a year from the day. And that was American Nightmare. And literally a year plus 1 day from that conversation, we were filming American Nightmare. And it was, you know, I was smart enough to hire a professional DP, sound mixer, and editor, but literally everybody else on the crew were just friends who had theater experience or things, you know, stuff like that. And a third of us are still working 20 years, 25 years later. We're all still working in the industry.
Wow. That's crazy, man. So what, so that was kind of mixed up in the next question, kind of your aha moment was the process of making that first movie?
Yeah, it was. And it was really, I mean, like, just to give, for people who are familiar with filmmaking, give you an idea of how unfamiliar I was being on set. Like literally the first day of filming, the first take up, Rick, who was the first AD, was like, you know, roll sound, and the sound mixer goes speed. And he and I looked at each other across the set. We had no clue what that was. And then we roll camera. First AC said speed. And I'm like, action? And when we got done with that take, you know, Rick comes over and goes, are they supposed to do that? I'm like, I have no idea. Let's see if they do it again. And you know, but it was the second day. I can literally remember succinctly the absolute aha moment, which was, you know, we'd spent a year putting this together in the scripts, and I love working with actors and, you know, working with the actors and building the characters. But that first night when we got done filming, and it was like, you know, back then it was like a 14-hour day, a 15-hour day, you know, and I got home and I was so exhausted, and we were shooting overnight. So it's like 7 o'clock in the morning when I get home, and I'm completely having an emotional meltdown. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. It was all money from friends and family. We had raised the whole budget through friends and family. And I was just like, I'm convinced everybody hates me. Nobody likes the movie, and I'm going to lose everybody their money. And somewhere in the midst of that delirium, I was like, just go to sleep. You're exhausted, go to sleep. And when I got up the next day, I had to run by, I had to go pick up something for the movie. And so everybody was on set getting stuff set up, and I showed up and I got out of the car, and we were setting up in the front yard, and everybody's working and they're all singing. They're doing that whistle song from The Great Escape. And they're like having an absolute ball. And I stood there and listened to the joy that was on the set. And I'm like, I don't ever want to do anything else except this. And that was that aha moment.
That's awesome, man. What a great story. What a great story. So for you to, I've told you a little bit about the background of what I'm trying to do with these interviews is kind of break open the process for, you know, actors and artists that are starting out in this business, and they you know, are trying to figure it out just like that. You know, my first feature that, you know, I co-produced, it was similar. It was like me and my buddy Lavender, and we were kind of standing in the valley looking up at Mount Everest going, hey, you want to go climb that? We're like, okay.
Exactly. That's exactly what we did.
I mean, I think the lesson in that is, you know, I hear time and again, you can't call yourself a filmmaker unless you make films, right?
Exactly.
And the best process is to go make a film, right? It's probably not going to be the best the first time out. You're probably going to figure some things out. You're probably going to stumble and trip and fall, but go do it, right? Just
well, and that's the thing I tell everybody is, if you want to be a filmmaker, you have to go make a movie. And if that's what you're passionate about and that's what you want to do, just do it. Figure it out. You know, there's so many tools and so many people and ways to do it now, but just do it. And the thing about it for me also is that learning never stops. I mean, I made my first movie 23 years ago, and I still, like, every movie I get done, whether I'm a director or a producer, every movie I get done, I still make a list of what didn't I do well on that movie? What can I improve on the next movie? And just keep learning and learning and learning. And the people that I see that are always working in the industry are the people that are willing to make the mistakes, you know, learn from their lessons and just keep learning and keep doing. And, you know, they're the ones that keep going. And so I urge everybody always, if this is what you want to do, just do it one way or another.
What makes an actor pop in an audition for you?
You know, it's funny, and I actually teach, I've done like audition workshops at like the Side Conservatory and such. And I think the big thing for me that makes an actor pop in an audition is bringing something that's not on the page to the table. I'm always, because I think one of the things I think most directors, 90% of directors look for is an actor who's going to take what's on the page and push it even further than we imagined. And I think we're always looking for somebody who's going to be collaborative, creative, can mine new things out of a character and bring something that's not the cliche. And so it's funny is when I'm doing an audition, you know, I'll watch 15 or 20 audition tapes, and everybody's kind of doing the same take of what's on the page. And then like audition 16, like this person comes on and they're doing a complete 180. And I'm just like, oh, wow, that's interesting. I didn't think about that. I didn't think that the character could be like that. And for me, that's the biggest thing that's going to pop is when an actor brings something completely unexpected. And I just had that. I directed these two movies in Ireland, and I would get like folders filled with auditions, and it'd be, you know, and there'd be 15 really good actors, nothing wrong with them. They're doing what's on the page. They're good actors. And then like number 16 would be like, oh, wow, I didn't think about the character being played that way. And even if, and the funny thing is, and I try to tell actors this, even if that 180 is not exactly what I want out of the character, the fact that they tried to take it somewhere else and they did a good job with it, a good performance with it, that's going to always get the call back for me. And then in that callback, I can start to fine tune it and play with it and see what else they can do. But a lot of the times the characters that are on the page completely elevate themselves with an actor who brings something different.
I heard this one saying one time where basically you go to the part and figure out like the top 5 things that you would do with it.
I know where you're going with this. Yeah.
Then throw them out and go to the next one.
That's exactly it. No, that's exactly it. Yeah. Practice what's on the page, you know, and then throw it away and find that thing that's not on the page and bring that to the table and give it to me. And one of the things I also love to do that I recommend to actors also when they're doing auditions is, you know, obviously spend some time with that dialogue and write out or practice, okay, what is the subtext of each one of these lines? And write out the subtext, the black and white on the nose subtext, and practice the audition using the subtext dialogue to get that really comfortable in your being, and then start to do the dialogue that's on the page and then go beyond that. And I mean, I don't know why this just jumped in my head, but a biggie thing also, and I'm sure you teach it, is be off book. Definitely don't be reading your sides on an audition. Like I see somebody holding the pages and I'm immediately on to the next one.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think at you know, especially nowadays when everything is self-tape, right? It used to be, you know, when I was coming up back in the day, right?
Exactly.
Right? You know, you drove to the room and you did your audition, and then, you know, you left. But now with self-submits, and, you know, they usually give you, you know, anywhere from 3 to 5 days notice. There's no reason whatsoever you should be on.
Exactly. Yeah. No. Yeah. Exactly. And for me, it's also, you know, there's a level of professionalism about being off book. It means that you're taking the role seriously. And that you're a person that can prepare, so that I know on the day when we're actually filming, you're somebody who's going to be prepared and have your dialogue memorized. Because I mean, 50% of casting has nothing to do with performance. It has to do with personality and character and who you are as a person. And do I want to be on set with you? And are you going to be prepared? And all of those sort of other elements that come to the table, you know, that's a huge part of it.
Yeah. Now I want to deconstruct a case study, right? Because we worked on Fall Down Dead together. It was Dominique Swain and
Udo Kier.
Udo Kier, David Carradine. I mean, just great cast. So I audition, I have the callback, I meet you, we go over the script, we actually go to dinner, right? And then we talk about everything, and then come back, and we're like, I don't know, 3 days away from filming, and I get a call from my agent, and I get this call, and they say, okay, so they're going to use you, but James Vanderbeek is going to take your role. But they're going to put you somewhere else in the movie. And I was like, what? And I was like, you know, I was like a pretty heavy supporting role in that movie. And I was like, what? No, right. But James Vanderbeek, you know, from a producing standpoint now, I didn't see it then, but now I 100% get it, right? If, you know, you had Mehmet Gunser, who's big in like the Middle East, Turkey, Italy, that area. And then you had Udo Kier in Germany. And then you had Dominique Swain. And then you had me. Right? Locking down the triad of North Carolina. Right? So from a producing standpoint, I 100% get it. So how did that behind the scenes play out?
So usually, yeah, and that's a funny story, and and I, you know, what's funny is I actually totally forgot about that until you just mentioned it and stuff. And the crazy thing is, for any filmmaker, that's still something that happens. I mean, that does not go away. You know, because so much of the filmmaking process obviously is financing, and that marketable cast is what drives the financing to make sure that there's enough money. And I don't really remember specifically in that instant, but just because it continues to happen, it's one of those, I remember reading this Vanity Fair article, and they were interviewing like Ridley Scott and all of these really, David Cronenberg and Woody Allen and all these famous directors and stuff. And what the article was about was, even at that level, you still don't necessarily have control over who your top cast is going to be, and Ridley, David Cronenberg was talking about, I think it was like Eastern Promises or something, and he was like, even that, I know who I want, but they still hand me a list of 10 actors, and they're like, choose one, you have to go with these, in order to get your financing. And I get that all the time. Anytime I'm setting up a new movie, here's the producers going, here's a list, who do you like, here's who we need. And one of the things that I've discovered as a producer now, and when I'm working with new directors, is you have to expect this. If you want to get your movie made, you have to expect it. And it happens to Ridley Scott, and it happens to Woody Allen and all of these big people, and I've even been in, even recently, like, hey, I found this actor who was fantastic for this role, just absolutely nailed it. And then I'm getting a call from the producers going, okay, so we're getting the numbers back from the distributor and the sales agents, and we're not quite hitting our strike price. So we're going to go out to this actor for this role that you've already cast, and sorry, you don't have a choice.
Right. Yeah.
And you have to roll with it.
Yeah. And in hindsight, my guess was, for some whatever reason, James Van Der Beek's schedule couldn't work out in 2 days, right? So
I'm sure it was something like that. Yeah, exactly.
But I was very fortunate to end up with that part, and I had a blast doing it.
I was grateful to have you.
It was so much fun, and that's the hard piece. That's when actors come out of the chute, all right, and they're trying to like gain that ground, right? That ended up being a pretty big feather in my cap. As an actor, it was like, okay, it was this lead. It was with David Carradine, with Dominique Swain. It was Udo Kier, and I was ready to put my boxing gloves on for it, right? And then it ended up working out. But sometimes you don't have that say in it, right?
No, exactly. You don't. And I mean, I've literally been told, I've been told by producers when I'm directing a movie, I've literally been told, like, we have to go with this person to bring up the financing. And I'm like, dude, that person is absolutely not right. And they're like, well, you cannot direct the movie. It's like, okay, well then let's, and I know that there's directors out there that would cut, they, to their credit, would be like, well, this isn't okay for me, and move on. But then, there's as I like to call it, the blue collar directors. I've got to keep working to make a living, and and I'm adaptable. We, you figure it out, but you have to make those choices, and those choices are always going to come up. I mean, I'm in the middle of another movie right now that I'm producing that, the director wants some very specific people, and I got this list, and they're all phenomenal actors, and they would just kill this movie. And I'm like, there isn't a person on this list that I can get this movie financed with. There's just no way. And there's this whole give and take that's trying to happen right now of who we can go, which roles, and who can we go with, and in order to get it made, because at the end of the day, it's the movie business. And there's a business that has to be run, and you have to create a product. I hate putting it that way, but you have to create a product that's going to sell. And that kind of circles itself back to the first time filmmaker, which is know what you're getting into. And if you haven't made a movie, or you haven't done stuff, start off with something really small, really low, where you don't need to have name actors just to get that movie. There's plenty of platforms to get your movie out. Go make the movie for 50 grand. Maybe you don't make all your money back, but you got the experience and you understand it as you take those steps forward. But the more you do and the bigger the budgets become, that's always going to be an element. And when I'm producing, or when I get hired by somebody to produce a movie, particularly with first or second time directors, I'm always like, among the things I tell them, I'm like, listen, your top 3 or your top 5 roles, you've got to be open. You've got to be open to suggestions that are going to drive the financing, and the more you give at that level, the more you're going to get in other ways. And I can't, hey, I went along with this. I need a little bit more money for post, or I need a little bit more time editing. If you're a team player, it's reciprocal. It can be reciprocal, and you'll get paid back in other ways. But you've got to kind of play that ball in order to kind of keep building and growing.
Now, is there ever a time for you creatively when you go to the mat? Like,
yes,
I'm going to the mat, and we're gonna have a face off.
There was a movie recently where where a particular actor was brought to the table, and I was told, we need this actor to play this role, and that actor was entirely wrong for the role. Like, I couldn't wrap my head around creatively how to ever make this actor work for the role and work for the story. And in that case, I was like, absolutely no, not to this person. And they were like, well, then you cannot direct the movie. And I went, okay, replace me. And they went, oh, wait, hold on. and they backed out of it. They backed off of it. Okay. So that those times have happened before, but in that moment where I just knew creatively there was no way, in that moment I was prepared not to direct the movie anymore. And so if they had said,
that
okay,
Fall Down Dead, right when James was up for my part, right?
I was a lot hungrier then. But one of the things too is I work with a lot, like nowadays, I work with a lot of the same production companies, and I work with a lot of the same producers. And the more you can kind of build that rapport, and the more you can also give at times, it gives you a little bit more ability, mutual respect when you're in that position. Because it's always, it's one thing when somebody gives you like 10 actors, I need you to choose one. Inevitably, there's at least one or two in there. But when it's like you're only beginning with one name, that's like, come on, guys, let's all work together. I know there's more than one name here. They can kind of fulfill that everybody will be happy with.
Yeah. That's great. When does an actor pop enough to be given that shot?
For me, it's in the callback. And what once you make, in my mind, once you make it to the callback, to me, at that point, you've already shown me that you could play the role. So in that callback, I'm doing two things. And part of it actually comes from a thing that Hitchcock used to talk about. Like these actors, these very famous actors who were still up and coming at the time, they'd be like, oh, I got a callback for Mr. Hitchcock. But the callback was going to be meeting him for dinner at this restaurant. And they'd show up, ready to perform at a table or whatever, and they were like, I literally sat with Hitchcock for 2 hours over dinner, and not once during the entire time did he ever talk about the movie. And what Hitchcock said later was, to me, once you've hit the callback, I know you can do the role. Now I want to know if I want to do the role with you. And so for me, that's for me, it's a twofold thing for my process in a callback. Is one, I'm going to now throw you a whole bunch of curveballs. And now what I'm doing is I'm looking to see what your range is and how well you can do the audition. Most likely the curveballs I'm throwing at you are never how I'm going to have you play the character. I just now want to know if you can take direction and what your range is if I give you a direction like this. So, if you pull that off, there's checkbox number 2, because you already made it to the audition, to the callback. And then the rest of my time, like when you and I went out to dinner, it's getting to know that person. What kind of personality are they? Do they seem like they're the kind of person that's going to be prepared? And are they a person that I want to be on set with for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and hang out with and be a part of it? And are they going to be a team player? And so for me, that second level that gets them the role is the person that showed me they could take that direction, whether we use it or not, and just getting to know them and knowing that I want to be around them.
That's such a great point, because I always say, you get thrown into this it basically becomes a little family for 3 or 4 weeks, right? Right? And it's
Absolutely.
like you're
Absolutely.
thrown into the fire, you're, you know, rah, rah, you battle, you know, and then it's done. You go cut on the last shot, and everybody packs up and goes, "See ya!" Right? You know,
Yeah,
you're just like, oh,
and
there's always
you
that,
make
like,
I know you make promises you're going to stay in touch.
yeah. There's always that kind of post production, like, huh, kind
Well,
of
and it's funny,
lull, you know?
you know, it's funny too. Like all of that is, and the one thing that I mean, I love the virtual auditions now. It makes my life so much easier, you know. And then thank God for things like Zoom and Google Meet and stuff, where we can then just have a conversation and such. But the thing I do miss about the in-person auditions was, and newer actors probably don't even know about this, but back in the day when everybody came in for an audition and you guys are all sitting out in the waiting area waiting to be brought in, most likely that one of those 2 or 3 people are sitting out there checking them in is actually a spy, and they're basically paying attention to the personalities of the people sitting out there. And you know, somebody would come in for an audition or come in for a callback audition, and then I'd be like, oh my God, I love this person. And I'd go to that person out there and like, what are they like out here? And like, dude, you do not want to work with that person. They were talking smack, and they were talking down to everybody, and they were just, and I'm like, good to know.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah.
You know, and so you don't get that anymore, which then makes for me that getting to know you process so much more important now. Also, you know, to have the meet at the dinner, or more often than not, you know, that hour-long Zoom, just, you know. And it's the same way, like the Hitchcock thing, you know, I jump on with these actors now, and it's like an hour of just talking, you know, maybe 10 minutes of it's about the movie or the character. I just want to get to know you now.
Right. That's huge. Yeah, that's huge. So now with the projects that you do, like you just finished up the 2 features with Antonio Banderas back to back, basically shooting somewhat simultaneously.
Yeah. I mean, we were.
Part.
Yeah, no, exactly. Antonio came in, we shot him for a few, you know, we shot his days on The Last Girl, and then immediately the entire crew switched over and we shot all of his days on the cleanup crew. And then once he was done filming both of those, then we switched back to Last Girl, shot the rest of the movie, then switched back to cleanup crew and shot the rest of the movie. And the same crew for the whole thing, just running all the way through.
Wow. And so from a directorial standpoint, so does that mean all of his coverage? So did you have to go back to some scenes that he was technically in, right?
Yes.
For the other actor.
So it was 100%. So it was interesting in that the 2 movies are very, very different. One's a very dark thriller. The other one's sort of an absurdist comedy action movie. And so they also had very entirely different shooting styles. So with Antonio's scenes on The Last Girl, the thriller, with the way that we were filming it, we were able to shoot all of the scenes out with him because there were very few setups in that movie because of the style. So we were able to shoot all of that. Now with the cleanup crew, yes, so I would basically go in, I would shoot my wide or my establishing shot with him, and then I'd shoot everything facing him. And, you know, we were shooting 2 cameras. So sometimes if the setup allowed, I would do my cross coverage at the same time. But for the most part, it was all about just shooting Antonio's side. And then when we came back a month later, a photo double comes in, and now we're shooting the reverse on the actors, and we're shooting over the shoulders over the photo double and such. Right. But even in, you know, but the thing that I did that was important to me, which was invaluable, was because I've been a producer on these other type of movies with big name actors where you're literally shooting their coverage and then coming back later. And I had seen on those movies where they would just have stand-ins and stuff, and you're just shooting that person's coverage. But when you turn around, the actor who's on the other side has no clue what happened, what it was like. And so I made sure that all of my actors who were in those scenes with Antonio were there with him to shoot all, you know, even though we might just be getting his coverage, they're with him so that when we did come back a month later, they've already done the scene. They know that, you know, and so they don't need anybody on the other side to be feeding them a performance. They can just do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I was on one film with two A-listers, and it was a whole scene. I played a doctor. I went in and I had to, tell them some information about their son, and shot the whole thing, and all their side, right? They never turned around on me at all, and I was like, but then like they were like, cut, wrap the day, and I was like, what? So
Right. Well, and that's funny is, so I made sure, like, when I was doing that callback conversation with the actors, particularly on cleanup crew, knowing about this, knowing that I was going to have to do it, that was a conversation I had with them. I said, listen, I'm going to bring you in for 2 or 3 days with Antonio. You're going to do the scenes. Most likely 75% of your scenes, we're not going to cover you. If I can on the 2-shot, I will, but otherwise, no. And then you're going to have to come back a month later and remember what you did. Are you okay with that? And across the board, of course, they're okay with it because now they know about it. And then I would work with them too. And we even made sure that, like, once their turnarounds came around, we had at least one of the takes, the best circle take. We had those takes ready for them on a computer to be able to watch again, just as a little refresher before they got into the scene.
Right. I think that's huge, because the skill set for the actor is, all right, it doesn't matter what's on that side of camera because the camera's right here and only this is in frame. And
exactly.
I have to be able to deliver something that's going to match what's going on with them when the editor edits it. So
well, and I would always encourage an actor in that situation also, and I did it on my, any of these movies we've done like that. I always encourage them to tell me what you need from me as the director, meaning that some of the actors, I would say a third of the actors wanted somebody on the other side of the camera being completely monotone. Don't give me anything. Let me just do my thing, and you're just feeding me words. And then probably a third of them were like, can you find me anybody that can give me something? And inevitably, there's a PA on set who's an up and coming actor. So, try to give them something. And then a third of the time, some of the actors are like, I don't want anybody there. I've got the dialogue memorized. I remember the scene. I know the scene. I know it. Just let me speak, and I don't need anybody speaking back to me. And I'm like, fantastic. So I always try to encourage the actors also in a situation like what you're talking about, to try to let them also know what you need to give the best performance when it's just you.
Right. Yeah, I've done the last scenario too at one point.
Yeah.
There's like a little green X on a C-stand on the other side of the camera, and you're just acting my tail off, man.
Exactly it. And that's why a director needs a great script supervisor too. to make sure, like, I would literally throughout all of this, I'd be looking at her, I'm like, is it matching? Is it matching? Is it matching? I'm loving what they're doing, but is it matching?
yes, that's crazy. That's great. Well, man, I don't want to keep you any longer, man. You've been gracious enough to give me your time, and I sure appreciate it, man. It's been fantastic catching up.
No, you're welcome. I'm glad. I love doing this. It was great getting to do it with you.
Is there any last piece of business, anything that you wish you would have known starting out that you want to tell?
It's not so much. Yeah, there is. It's a quick little story, and it's not even so much what I wish I had known, but I wish somebody had told me. And I remember early in my career, this is before Fall Down Dead, because Fall Down Dead was like 2006. So, maybe 2 or 3 years into my career, I'm still trying to, I'm still having to hold the job down while I'm doing this and, things like that. And you wake up in the morning and you're just like, I can't do this anymore. Should I be doing this? Am I making the right choice? And I remember somewhere in there reading an interview, once again, with David Cronenberg, coincidentally. And Cronenberg talked about just before he made The Fly, which exploded him internationally. He was already huge in Canada. But he was like, I would wake up every morning and I'm done. I don't want to do that. I can't do this anymore. I'm not going anywhere. And I'd lay there for a minute and then I'd be like, but I can't do anything else. I don't want to do anything else. And he said, I'd literally claw my way out of the bed, determined not to give up today. And he did that every day. And I tell that, and I know exactly what he's talking about. I've been there. I've done that. I mean, you know, I've done that later in my career also, you know, when there's a streak of bad luck. And so what I tell everybody is, if you're meant to do this, if you want to do this, do not give up no matter what. Keep going. Persistence pays off.
That's so true. That's so. I saw this interesting math equation that I think is relevant to your point, and it's event plus response equals outcome, right? So the event happens, and however you respond to it is where the outcome is going to be. Like if you give up, the outcome is giving up. If you go forward, you know, something will work out, right?
Exactly.
So
that's exactly it.
Jump and the net will appear.
Absolutely. Jump off the cliff.
Right.
Trust that something will be there to catch you.
That's awesome. Well, John, man, I sure appreciate it, dude. I hope post-production on these goes fantastic, and I look forward to keeping it going, man.
Wonderful. I appreciate it. We'll talk soon.
Sounds good, man. Take care.
Take care, brother. Bye.